This tutorial is going to show you how to use voxel objects to make caverns and caves inside Sandbox 2. Now I have this cliff face that I've made and detailed. Edges aren't cleaned up, but that's okay. There's quite a few bugs inside the voxel editor, unfortunately, that make it kind of difficult to work with, so I'm going to work around them. I may even get some of them wrong here. So I'm going to put a cliff, or a cave right here, and I'm going to connect it all the way through to this side. So let's start first, before you make the voxel object, with making a hole in the side of the cave. Don't worry about this being rough. We'll restore it later using the voxel object. And so I'll put my exit over here. Now set your grid size to 64 before you place your voxel object. That'll make it so it associates with the terrain correctly. Then we'll actually break up the voxel object later, fix some of the bugs that are in there. So go to your roll-up bar, go to Objects, Miscellaneous, Voxel Object. Now voxel objects are really hard to get to glue in just the right place, but I can get it over this and then move it down. So make sure it encompasses both of your holes that you painted in the side of the mountain. Now copy the terrain into the voxel. Don't worry about it chopping the top off. Turn on the Snap to Terrain. Turn on Smart Base Color. This will allow us to paint the voxel. Because right now, if you don't turn on that on and you try to paint the voxel, it'll actually paint the terrain above it. Don't turn on Link to Terrain, because that'll actually get rid of the hole and actually change our voxel. Turn on Cast Shadow Maps. This lets the inside of the cave be dark. That's about all we need to do for now. Now what we got to actually do is save and reopen the file. Now take your voxel where the top's obviously missing. You can either put another voxel on top of it and copy it, but I found that if you actually split it into smaller parts, you can get your terrain back. You can also delete some of the other parts and save some geometry. So now we have our two little voxels here, and if you try to, how you normally do this is go to Terrain, Voxel Painter, and go to Subtract. You'll note that it doesn't seem to be subtracting. It actually is, but our hole's missing in the side of the mountain. Again, this seems to be a bug where you have to save, reload the map, and turn off the voxel layer, leaving just the terrain. Your hole's there. So if I turn on the voxels now and go to the painter and subtract, now I can actually cut in. So there's quite a few times we gotta reload, and it gets annoying. Now before we start cutting into the voxel here, these are all 2D textures. Or I should say 2D, they only project from the Z-axis textures that are used inside the demo map. For voxels, we need a 3D texture, one that paints in all directions. So what we're going to do is go to Terrain, Texture, and we're going to make a new texture. Let's call it Caverns. Under Caverns, make a new surface type 2. And then go to the Material Editor. Find a material used for voxels. And some of them are actually kind of hard to find, as far as in the demo right now, whether or not they actually work. I think I actually had to end up using Asteroid Wall in one point. Well, let's try Rock Mine. Let's see if that works. Pick selected. OK. Surface type to caverns. set a quartz texture, close. Go to your voxel painter and pick caverns. Give it a base color of some sort. I guess actually the color of the rock face here would be great. Go to subtract. Remember where your hole is in the wall. You can start subtracting away. Now, I'm actually going underwater, which I don't really want to do, but I can fix later. So obviously this texture is not working. There, that one works. So let's go to our voxel painter and let's just go all the way through to our hole on the other side, which should be over here. Now if you're trying to get your voxels worked around and you end up keep hitting the terrain, just go ahead and turn it off. And then you can view it from the outside. Figure out where you need to go. And there we have a linked tunnel. Now it's obviously extremely rough. So what we can do is go to the voxel painter, use the blur tool. Now the blur tool, unfortunately, really shrinks things up. So usually you have to make everything very large. I actually still think we're missing one texture because the tops and bottoms are not painted correctly. Let's try cave number 2. Let's try this one. Oh, that one's way worse. Guess I should have looked up the one I used earlier. Well, this will work for now. Now you notice it got this green. And that's because we need to go into the voxel. And that's where we need to do the smart base color. Now everything defaults to white. You turn on the snap to terrain. The settings lose themselves when you split the voxel into pieces, basically. And we'll turn our shadow maps back on. Alright. So let's say this is good enough for our cavern. But it's all, of course, all the wrong colors. So there's a material painter inside the voxel program. Now you can actually note that you gotta be careful around these edges, because otherwise it'll expose your hole. So I'm being very rough again. Now, of course, all of it being texture the same is really pretty boring. So we can go paint the bottom with rocks. Use the ice texture to create some stalactites and stalagmite looking features. And actually sometimes this air will actually end up looking like what's called a I can't remember. I think it's called a curtain feature. And that's basically how you work with voxels. If you want to make a flat area, you go to blur, a box, set the radius low, It'll flatten out a nice area for you to work with if you need to, or if you're trying to make an underground facility or something like that. And there you go, hole in the wall. When you go to generate surface textures, you have to turn on calculate sky accessibility in order to darken the inside of the cave. Currently, it does at least get the shadows, but it does get too much light from the outside right now. That's pretty much it.